Welcome back to another episode of Dueker Sports. I'm joined as always by Christian Lunday, and the off season's underway. Lots of things are happening. Just today, Derek Carr they announced a reported deal that he's going to the New Orleans Saints, and then Geno Smith staying put. Now we predicted Geno Smith to stay put in one of our previous shows, and I did have the New Orleans Saints listed as my number two possibility for Derek Carr, so self pat on the back. Um, in other news, Calvin Ridley also coming back. The NFL reinstated him this morning, and he will be allowed to join the Jaguars at the beginning of next season, which is going to make that team even more dangerous than they were this year, which was pretty dangerous. But today's episode, we're going to talk about the NFL Combine that took place over the weekend, and Christian and I are going to give you our top 10 players from the NFL Combine, basically the top 10 Combine performances. I don't know what were your standards when you were making this list.
I don't know. There's guys that jump off the page at me. Size, speed combination. The bigger you are, the harder it is to move faster. So if you moved really fast at a higher weight, that usually impressed me. Um, it's kind of hard because for certain players, I had certain expectations going in, and if they didn't meet those standards, those expectations, then I didn't put them on my list. I.e., Quentin Johnston, he didn't even run the 40, and that's my biggest question mark for him. What's his long speed? So he didn't make my list, but that's sort of my standard. Pretty subjective. What about yours? What was your standard?
For me, I think the biggest one was like rating players against the other players at their position. And so basically, I'd go through and I'd take every single drill that was done and I would compare them to their peers and say, basically what I was looking for is like if someone dominated at their position in each of the drills, then I'd put them on this list. I get them a higher score. Um, Honestly, I didn't even tell you this, but my original list was 28 players long. There are 28 players that I thought were just had an outstanding performance at the combine. Um, but I had to do a lot of consideration to get it down to 10. And I still don't really feel good about I feel great about the 10 that are on my list. I don't feel good about many of the 18 I had to leave off it.
Yeah.
But I almost just gave away my number one, so we better get started. I wanted to say something about him, but we'll save that. We're gonna count down from 10 on down to 1, and I guess I'll go ahead and get it started. So my number 10 is Sidney Brown. He's the safety from Illinois. So here's why, and I'll do this at each position. So one thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to give you the metrics, and then I wanted to kind of talk about some pros or cons that I see in this guy's game. And then I actually even went through and I predicted what round I think that they'll be drafted in as well. So with Sidney Brown, so he's a 5'10", 211 safety, which is it's about average. That's nothing crazy. He ran a 4.47, which was fourth best among safeties. He had the third best 10-yard split. He had a 40.5-inch vertical, which was tied for third among safeties. A 10-foot, 10-inch broad jump, which was second among safeties. He also had 23 bench reps, which was also second among safeties. So he had an overall, I believe it's the raw athletic score, RAS. He had a 9.63, which was also second among safeties. So one thing that I've seen with him and I've seen mentioned many times, the only con I really see in this guy's game is open field tackling. He does not do well in space when it comes to tackling the ball carrier. He kind of gets stiff almost, which is weird considering the metrics we just gave you. You would think this guy would be a freak in space, but he actually has had a hard time making open field tackles. But he's strong. He's athletic. I read a report that he struggles in man coverage. I did not see that. I think he runs really well with tight ends or receivers. Obviously, one thing I was like, they were knocking him, saying that he wouldn't be able to guard star receivers at the next level. But how many safeties can? Not very many. Some pros. He had 6 interceptions last year. He has been a starter. He's started games pretty much every year of his career. So he has tons of experience. And like we've mentioned already, he's a freak athlete. I looked at NFL.com's position rankings for each of these players before the combine, and then they've actually added some pretty cool new metrics. They give them an overall score based off of their combine performance, their production performance in college, and they come up with a overall score. He was ranked. He was safety. He was a 10th ranked safety before the combine. His current grade would make him the 5th best safety, and after the combine. I see this guy as a round 2 pick all day long. I think he immediately you can throw him in right now. He has the athleticism to. He's obviously going to probably make some rookie mistakes in coverage. They always do. But I think this guy has the athletic ability and the strength to be a difference maker from the very beginning. My number 9 is a defensive tackle, Jalen Redmond from Oklahoma. Boomer Sooner, that one's for Christian. There it is. I'm not a Sooners fan, but I wanted you to have that moment.
Thank you.
This guy's a 6'2", 291 defensive tackle. So he absolutely obliterated his competition, which I have to think part of that is due to the fact that Jalen Carter obviously was not there, dealing with the legal troubles, obviously. But Jalen Redmond, he had a 4.8140, which would rank second among D tackles. He had the second ranked 10-yard split. He had the number 1 vertical at 34.5 inches. He had a 9'8" broad jump, which was also first. He was also first in the 3-cone drill. He was also first in the 20-yard shuttle. And he was 4th in bench press with 27 reps. So that is remarkable. This guy, like his ability, that's one thing I saw in his notes. A lot of people were talking about like he has a burst. I think that's an understatement. A burst does not define what this man has. He has freak athletic abilities, what he has. And I think with him, the 291 frame for a defensive tackle is not overly big. It's not terrible because you look at Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald came in, I think, maybe even less than that. So you can succeed. But he's 291, so I was like a little bit worried about his strength. I love the fact that he did the bench press, though, and he got 27 reps. So for me, that kind of takes care of some of those concerns. He had a raw athletic score of 9.63, which was the number 1 at his position. And going into the draft, they had him ranked defensive tackle number 16. Coming out of it, this guy might have had the biggest jump of anybody. He's up to number 5 at his position. For me, I see him going as like a late 3, early 4. I think he didn't have the production that you would like to see for a guy that's this much of a monster and at a position that's undervalued. So I do think he'll fall to at least the 3rd round. I think it'd be a little bit of a stretch for someone to go get him. However, when you look at that athletic ability, I think, some team could make the leap and grab him in the 2nd round. I think it would be a bit of a stretch. But yeah, I think he absolutely dominated the combine as my number 9.
I'm shocked at the 4th round ranking by some people, but I've also been equally shocked sometimes when you're watching Oklahoma games. Jalen kind of pops off the screen there, and I've heard people say late first, to middle 2nd rounder. That's how good that guy is. So seeing him to kind of shine on the big stage is one awesome because he's been a good player for Oklahoma. Like you said, production's not there where you would typically see someone with his athletic prowess, but man, like where he's been ranked before the combine to now, that's a massive jump, just like you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, he could, if he climbed into the 2nd, I'd be a little bit surprised. I also think that there are just so many good skill position players that will be taken ahead of
Going to
him
be hard,
that
yeah.
played a factor. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes in the 3rd round. I'd be surprised if they take him in the 2nd, though. But my number 8, we have our first quarterback on the list, and that is Clayton Tune, the quarterback from Houston. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how I feel about this guy's ability at the next level. I don't know if he's going to pan out. I think he's definitely a project, but he benefited himself greatly, I think, in this combine. I think he was easily the 2nd most athletic quarterback obviously behind Anthony Richardson. Um, but Clayton Tune put on an absolute show. He had the second best vertical at 37.5 inches. He had the third best broad jump. He was first in the 3-cone drill, and he was second in the 20-yard shuttle. That being said, two of the fastest quarterbacks in the combine did not do either of those events, Anthony Richardson being one of those guys. He had the fifth fastest 40 time at 4.64, but that's pretty good for a quarterback. And he had the fifth fastest 10-yard split. He's also, I think it's important to mention, I like size when it comes to quarterback, obviously. He's 6'2.5", and he weighs 220. So that's the positive when it comes to his size. The negative is hand size. So he was tied for the smallest hands among quarterbacks in the draft. If you don't follow the combine or follow football really closely, you're like, what is he talking about? Why is he talking about this man's hand size? And I'm going to tell you why, because it matters. That's a pretty good metric to determine, honestly, everything. How much accuracy you can, you have, how much touch you can put on the ball, even how far you can throw the ball. Hand size is huge when it comes to quarterback. It's not the whatever they say, be all end all or end all be all. Don't know what they say.
Yeah, you're
But it's
right. The
not
second one.
that. It's not that. But I think it is a factor. And so having the second smallest hand size at 9 3/8 inch, that's still pretty big hands. So he'd probably be all right. I see him as so first of all, he had a 9.72 raw athletic score, which was second best for quarterbacks. He came in quarterback number 10. They currently have him scored at quarterback number 7. I think that he's a guy that's going to go round 4 or 5. I think if he was in last year's quarterback class, I think he goes higher. It was a very weak quarterback class. This is a decently strong one. It's not, I think it's been blown a little bit out of proportion how good it is. I think it's a good one. It's not a great one in my opinion. But because it's a good one, I think that he'll probably fall to round 4 or 5. However, because the quarterback class is good, it honestly could move him up the draft because, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but I think we're going to see a lot of quarterbacks taken in the first round, if not the top 10. Some guys definitely helped themselves out this weekend. But moving on to my number 7, we get a guy from BYU, offensive tackle Blake Freeland. This guy put on a freaking show. He is 6'8", 302 pounds. That's going to be very important to remember when I list some of these metrics that he had. He ran a 4.98, which can you imagine a 6'8", 302-pound guy running at you at a 4.98 speed? That's absurd. He had the highest 10-yard split among any offensive lineman. He had a 37-inch vertical. There's nothing out of reach for this guy. 6'8" with a 37-inch vertical. That was number one among offensive linemen. He had a 10-foot broad jump. That was number one among offensive linemen. And he was fourth in the 3-cone drill. He had a raw athletic score of 9.82, which was surprisingly only third best amongst, I believe, all offensive linemen. Or maybe it's just tackles. But, yeah, so with him, and I've seen this guy play many games as well, Christian talked about. So I don't really have a college team that I root for religiously, pun intended. But BYU is one team that I root for. I go to BYU. I root for BYU. I also root for Missouri because I'm from Missouri. But watching him at BYU, I will say he actually is kind of the opposite of most guys his size. His pros are in the pass protection. He has, and obviously you look at these numbers, he's quick on his feet. His problem is actually with the 6'8" frame. 302 is not that much weight on a 6'8" frame. So he actually tends to get bullied with leverage in the run game instead of the pass game. Yeah, so I have his pros, pass block, his cons, run block, leverage, weight, and strength. He came in as the 27th ranked offensive lineman. He was the 14th ranked offensive tackle. He leaves ranked as the number 7 offensive tackle. and the number 10 overall offensive lineman. Because of that, I think he goes rounds 2 or 3. I think I think he'll probably go round 2 because of how well those numbers are. And a 6'8" guy put some weight. It'll be easy for him at this level to put some weight on that frame and to increase his strength. That happens pretty much universally once you enter the NFL. So I think the upside for this guy is tremendously high. He might even sneak into the first round, but I doubt it. But definitely, I think he's a second round pick. If he falls to the third round, it'd be very interesting to me because he was also a captain multiple years at BYU. He was well received in the locker room. And even if you watch the combine, several guys that were participating as his peers were surrounding the guy, cheering him on. He was having a good time with them. So I think that overall, I mean, he's got high character traits as well. So I think easily a second round pick for him. My number 6, we have a tight end sighting. We got Luke Musgrave from Oregon State. Yep, there's one tight end. Will there be another? We'll see. So Luke Musgrave he came in. I'm gonna jump off to start with this. He came in ranked as the number 1 tight end by NFL.com coming into the combine. And I think he did a lot to support that. He ran a 4.61. That was 4th best at tight end. He had the fastest 10-yard split, a 36-inch vertical, and a 10'5" broad jump. So for me, I would not draft him. Saying all of that. And the reason why I would not draft him, number 1, he was not productive really at all. I don't think he ever had even 30 catches in a single season. He's also coming off a season-ending knee injury as well. So I think there are some definite red flags when it comes to him. He is 6'6", 253, with pure athleticism, though. So he's definitely worth taking a flyer on later in the draft if he makes it that far. He did have a raw athletic score of 9.95, so dang near perfect. So he came in ranked number 1. He actually leaves ranked number 3, which I find very fascinating. I forget it now. I should have written it down, but there are 2 guys who actually leapfrogged him who had good combines, but I think that he had the second best performance among all tight ends, and he got leapfrogged. But I wonder how much of that has to do with they knew he was going to be athletic. Maybe they expect him to be even more athletic than he was, and did a pretty great job as it is. All this being said, I think someone's going to take a chance on him in the second round. 6 foot, like how do you not? You see the Travis Kelce's of the world, you see the Rob Gronkowski of the world, you see what that does for an offense. It really, and I say this all the time about the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelce runs that offense. He opens it up for everybody else. What he can do across the middle of the field is pretty much otherworldly, and it allows receivers on the outside to get one-on-one matchups. It allows open running lanes, and I think Travis Kelce, outside obviously of Patrick Mahomes, is easily the most important player in the Chiefs. He kind of helps. He's the oil that keeps that machine running. So everyone's going to be looking for someone like that. A 6'6", 253 tight end running a 4.61 just might have some people considering him in the second round.
Bro, if someone drafts Luke Musgrave over Michael Mayer and Darnell Washington, I don't know. I'll figure out something. I'm trying to lose weight. I'll run 2 miles if that happens. I don't know. I'll figure out something.
Yeah. So those are the 2 guys actually that are leapfrogged him. So that bodes well
Makes
for
sense.
you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think his production just isn't there, especially Mayer. I watched him play against BYU this year. Holy smokes. You know that guy's getting the ball every single play, and it does not matter. You can double it, it does not matter.
Yeah, I was just telling you before we started this that I actually went to the bowl game that Notre Dame had here like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and he was the main focal point of the offense. You couldn't escape him, basically. It didn't matter what the defense did. Michael Mayer was catching the ball. The offense was tailored specifically to him. And it was a joy to actually watch him in person. So, I mean, I don't know. Luke Musgrave had a heck of a combine, but I don't know. He's a question mark.
If we had Thomas Jank on the show, he'd be salivating about Notre Dame tight ends. He's a Notre Dame fan. That's all he ever talks about. Tight end you. My number 5 is probably on most people's list and probably even higher. It's a wide receiver. Our first wide receiver, Bryce Ford Wheaton. He's a wide receiver from West Virginia. This guy dominated the combine. I call guys like this a workout warrior because he may not be the best player on the field, but you put him in the gym or in some tight pants and you just let the guy get to work. He ran a 4.38 40, which was fourth best among receivers. He had a 41-inch vertical, which was tied first among receivers. A 10'9" broad jump. He was seventh in the 3-cone drill and third in shuttle. What makes this even more impressive is he's 6'4", 221 pounds. He is massive. Now, everything that I hear about this guy is that he's a bad route runner. That's all I read. Every article I've read talks about this guy being a bad route runner. And I think that's what's going to kill him. But he does have the size, he has the speed, and he has the leaping ability. This guy is a jump ball hero. You just throw it up and let him go get it. Guys like that always are going to get drafted every single time, especially guys like that who run 4.38s and have 41-inch verticals. He had a raw athletic score of 9.96. A perfect score is 10, just in case anyone was wondering. That was best among receivers. He actually came in ranked as wide receiver 43, according to NFL.com. But after the combine, they have him all the way up at number 22. So for me, I think this guy's a 5th-round draft pick because you see guys do this every year. You see guys come in, put on a show at the combine. They didn't really stand out in college, and then they get drafted. And I would say 50% of the time or more, they don't pan out in the NFL either. So you look at this guy as a project. Someone needs to get him in there working on his routes. If he can improve his route running significantly, I think he'll be a great receiver in the league because of his jump ball ability. Now, he could go higher than that, but me personally, I think if you're talking about a wide receiver 22 status, round 5 to me sounds about right, especially because there are so many good wide receivers in this year's draft, and a bunch of them were super athletic. I had to leave off tons of them off my list. So doesn't bode well for his draft stats, but he helped himself out tremendously because this was a guy they were talking about possibly not even making an NFL roster at one point, and now they're or at least in year 1, and now he's moved up to round 5. My number 4, I'm going to do my best not to butcher this name. I looked it up right before. It is Andre Yosevash. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. I'm pretty sure that's how the home announcer pronounces it at all the Princeton games. So that's what I'm going with. He's a 6'3", 205-pound receiver. He ran a 4.43. He had a 39-inch vertical. He had a 10'8" broad jump. Now, all three of those things were lesser than what Ford Wheaton did. However, he defeated him in the 3-cone drill where he finished second. He defeated him in the shuttle drill where he finished second. And he did the bench press drill and finished 5th, which is a good thing because at 205 and at 6'3", some people are calling him lanky, but when you watch him play, he does not look lanky at all. He looks jacked. They honestly, the thing that they talked about with him was his ability to track the ball, which that I could see. His hands are inconsistent. He actually has really small hands for a wide receiver. There we go again, talking about hand size. I can't remember what his hand size was, but I think it was like, yeah, I was gonna say it was in the 8 inches. So for an NFL wide receiver, that's actually pretty small. So tracking and hands. The question is physicality. I didn't see that on tape. Now I'm not an NFL scout. I feel like I'm a pretty good NFL analyst. I think I'm a decent scout, but a lot of scouts are saying that he doesn't have the physicality to play at the next level. He's another guy that they've talked about battling to make it on the roster year one. He came in ranked wide receiver 17. He actually left wide receiver 20. So he actually dropped despite his amazing combine performance. I think this is another case of they were hoping he was just going to blow the roof off the place. I think he did a fairly good job of that. I think he had the fourth best performance at the combine, and that still was not enough to jolt him. Uh, that being said, I think that he's a late round 4, early round 5 guy. So I would take him ahead of Ford Wheaton based off what I've seen. He did have a lot better production than Ford Wheaton, I do believe. I watched some highlights of his actually just before the show. That's what I was doing. I was trying to learn his name. Also enjoying me some pretty nasty highlight reel. So going on, I am super excited about these next 3 guys. So my number 3, we're giving some more love to the offensive line. John Gaines, the second offensive guard from UCLA. He's 6'4", 303 pounds. The guy is absolutely absurd. He had the 6th fastest 40 time among offensive linemen. He was 3rd in 10-yard split. He had the 3rd best vertical, 3rd best broad jump. He finished 1st in 3-cone and 20-yard shuttle. He had a raw athletic score of 9.95. And what everyone's been talking about his coaching staff before the combine and coaches who have been meeting with him at the combine. Everyone's raving about this guy's intelligence level. They're saying that he might be one of the most intelligent offensive linemen, if not the most intelligent that's entering the draft this year. They say he has a great football mind. I think he's going to have a coaching career after his playing career is done. His physical traits are undeniable. He's extremely athletic. He looks like a phenomenal athlete at the combine. Here's my issues with him, and if you watch it on tape, it's pretty obvious. The guy needs to work on his technique severely bad. Severely. Uh, he has poor posture and poor balance, which leads to poor hand placement and technique all the way around. I think that's something that's very coachable at the next level, though. That's actually something you see a lot among college players, especially these days, when most teams are running a spread offense, and these guys aren't really getting their hands in the dirt that often. And it's just, I don't know, just throw the ball and hope for the best is kind of the offensive system, I think, in college football. This guy has a lot of work to do, but I think offensive linemen, you can never have enough because offensive linemen get injured constantly. And when you have a guy with these physical traits and that intelligence level is huge. It is huge. I think that, to me, it means he'll probably learn quickly to fix his technique. So that would make up for his lack of physical traits. He came in as the 13th ranked guard. He left it as the 7th ranked guard. And I see him as a round 3 or 4 kind of guy. Okay, these top 2 guys absolutely went off at the combine for me. Before I get in, well, there we go. We two guys had perfect raw athletic score ratings. This guy was number 1, and my number 1 choice also was the other. Both of them had a perfect 10 score. So Zach Kuntz is a tight end from Old Dominion. So we talked about how amazing it was what Luke Musgrave did and his size. This guy's 6'7". He's even taller, and 255. He's bigger too. He ran a 4.55, which is insane at that size. That's like average speed for a wide receiver on the outside, and he's running it as a 6'7", 255-pound man. On top of that, he had the second fastest split. He had a 40-inch vertical, which is absurd. He had a 10'8" broad jump, which was also number 1 among tight ends. He had a 3-cone. He had the fastest 3-cone drill, second fastest 20-yard shuttle, and he finished tied in first with 23 bench reps as well, which means that possibly he can improve as a blocker, which he's going to need to, because some of his cons I've seen is his hands, his physicality, his blocking. He basically, everyone knew this guy's going to dominate the drills at the combine because he is an athletic monster. And you see that when you watch him play. He's one of the most athletic tight ends in college football, but he kind of plays like a wide receiver being stuck at tight end. He does not block well at all. In fact, I mean, I'm getting Jimmy Graham vibes from this guy. A guy that's going to be it's going to be argued about, is he wide receiver, is he tight end? I think that kind of thing is over with now. Jimmy Graham was kind of the forefather for that. But if you remember, they would hide Jimmy Graham. You never, hardly ever see Jimmy Graham blocking on an NFL field because he couldn't. He was not good at it. They kept trying to make him good at it, and they weren't good at that. He continued to struggle throughout his career. And when I see Zach Kuntz, I see similar thing here. However, we talked about it earlier with the previous tight end. It's about 6'7", 255, and he had a perfect raw athletic score. He is so dang athletic. I'm like, give him a chance. Just let him do his thing. Who cares whether or not he can block? It does concern me because his hands aren't that great, but coach him up, work with him. A guy that's this athletic has a place on an NFL roster. He has a chance to get on the field as well. He came in ranked as tight end number 14. He left it ranked 7th. I think he's an early 4th-round pick kind of guy for me. You just don't see the production as much with him. And obviously, his questionable hands and blocking skills, that's kind of the two most important things as a tight end. You can be athletic all day, but at the end of the day, it's not a track meet. It's a football game. So he has some work to do. He is a project, but he has massive upside, massive. If you can get this guy to the next level and help him figure it out, he could be like one of the most unstoppable tight ends in the NFL because that's going to be a matchup nightmare. How many tight ends can cover a
Jeez.
guy?
Sorry.
Okay. Well, if anyone can help him out, it's probably Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes.
Just got something on my chest there.
But 4th-round pick is my prediction for this guy. Probably early 4th round, I would say. And the guy that I've been waiting for days to talk about, it is the quarterback. It is time for Anthony Richardson from Florida to get his shine. If he hasn't had enough already, I'm going to give him a ton right now. So we talked about it before. I had him listed as one of the guys to watch because to me, I was like, they're comparing him to Cam Newton, but he doesn't quite have the size of Cam Newton. But I was like, if he can run in the low 4.5s, then we start having a conversation about this guy going number 1 overall. Oh, he did a lot more than run a low 4.5. The dude ran a 4.43, which is actually I think, I don't want to get it wrong. I think it was like the 4th fastest, tied for the 4th fastest in the modern era amongst quarterbacks. The modern era being since 2003, that's when they started using laser speed instead of just timing it on a watch. Obviously, that's a lot more accurate to laser speeds. Not only did he have the 4th fastest 40-yard time in NFL history for a quarterback, he had the best vertical ever. He had a 40.5-inch vertical as a quarterback, which if that doesn't show explosiveness, I don't know what does, other than his 10'9" broad jump, which was also tied for the best amongst quarterbacks of all time. And he also was 3rd in 10-yard split, and he had the 2nd biggest hands. We're talking about it again. He has massive hand size. And then, on top of all of this, he threw the ball pretty well. His arm strength, there was never any question. But if there's even a shadow of a doubt, it has been lightened away because he threw 60 yards in the air at least 3 times during the combine. He has the strongest arm of any quarterback in this draft by far, in my opinion. He is a rocket for his arm. I don't know. To me, I'm still concerned because his footwork did not look that great. I don't know that necessarily. We see a lot of guys overcome those issues. Patrick Mahomes coming out, I wasn't a big fan of his footwork or his decision making at all, and now he's the best quarterback in the National Football League. So I don't think Anthony Richardson has the throwing ability to compete with Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But his running ability, he may be one of the best rushing quarterbacks we ever see coming to the league. Because you have guys like Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, who are extremely fast. Then you have guys like Cam Newton and Jalen Hurts, who either due to just sheer size, or Jalen Hurts does have some pretty great juke moves, uh, become phenomenal runners. How often do we see a guy have both? And that's what Anthony Richardson represents here. He is massive. He is 6'4", 244 pounds. He's 1 inch and 8 pounds smaller than Cam Newton, and he runs a 4.44. That is absolutely lethal. I didn't like what I saw with him when he was throwing the out routes. He missed pretty badly, which is kind of the knock on him. It's not really can he throw the ball down the field. It's actually like, okay, when there's a guy wide open, 5 yards running it out, can you hit him? Now, that reminds me of Carson Wentz. That's kind of the thing with Carson. It's like I've seen him make amazing throws, and I've seen him miss guys in the flat on a consistent basis. And that's a similar question mark people are having with Anthony Richardson. But if Carson Wentz was 6'4", 244, and ran a 4.44, I think he'd be having an easier time sticking on teams in the NFL. So Anthony Richardson, I see him. He is obviously not escaping the first round. And after this performance, there's not a way in heck that this guy falls out of the top 10. And that's what I was going to talk about among quarterbacks. You look at Bryce Young. I think the number one quarterback conversation, there are really three guys, but I think after the combine, I think it's got to be either Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson going number one. But CJ Stroud also, my problem with him is that he didn't compete in any of the fitness drills. He did throw the football, though. He looked obviously like a better thrower than Anthony Richardson. I would have loved to see what he could do athletically, but he really couldn't do anything except for hurt himself by doing that, especially with what Anthony Richardson was doing. So he didn't compete. But you look at Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and then Hendon Hooker could get in. He's coming off a torn ACL. They're saying he'll be ready by week 1. But as a rookie quarterback, to be drafted in the top 10, you don't want a guy that's going to be just getting back to full strength week 1. You need him to go through the entire offseason, rookie training camp, regular training camp. You got to get him in preseason games. You got to get some experience underneath that guy's belt. So I don't think that he'll go in the top 10. But right there's 4 guys that I think that for sure go in the first round. Because I think Hendon Hooker, I think someone's got to get him in the late first round. I don't care. Like trade back up if you're quarterback desperate, because someone could get a steal. Because I think he's right there to me with Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson competing for being the number one quarterback in my opinion. I continue to think that he reminds me of Desmond Ridder, who I'm still super excited about. But Will Levis is another quarterback who competed in minimal drills at the combine, but the ones he did compete in, he did extremely well. So I think you could see 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round this year, which is absurd when you look at the draft we just had last year. I don't think now I'm questioning myself, but I don't think there was a quarterback taken in the first round, was there? Or is it Kenny Pickett taken in the first round?
I'd have to double check.
Yeah.
Let me look at that.
So I think that they either had no quarterbacks taken in the first round, or they had literally only one, and it's Kenny Pickett. And I think he was taken. If he did go, it was in the 20s. Can you verify that yet?
Let's see here.
I got it right here. So
Looks
Kenny Pickett
like-
draft. Yep, he went pick number 20. So they had one first round quarterback taken last year.
The only one.
Yep. That was like the first time that a quarterback hadn't been taken in the top 20 picks, and I forget how many years, but in an absurd amount of time. I think only second in the modern era. But now you look at a draft. This is what everyone's talking about. 5 quarterbacks easily, because I think Will Levis easily on the same level as Kenny Pickett, in my opinion. And you look at like what Malik Willis, everyone was really excited about him last year. Anthony Richardson is more athletic and clearly a better thrower of the football than Malik Willis. And he comes from an SEC team, which will also be heavily valued during the draft process. But I cannot wait. After watching the combine, cannot wait for the NFL draft. It's next month. It's actually in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm born and raised in Missouri. Christian spent a lot of his life in Missouri, and I'm hoping to get a chance to go. But this is going to be one heck of a draft. I cannot wait to see it. But that's my top 10 best combine performances from this year's combine.
Hey, that's a fantastic list. I obviously there's only 10 slots, and just like you had 28 players. You said 26, 28 players, something like that. You had to cut it down, so some people missed the cut, probably unjustly. At least for my side, I know that I probably missed a few guys. So don't take it personally. But here is my top 10 list, starting with number 10, Anton Harrison. Here's a tackle who I think has improved his draft stock and is looking at a late first round grade. He ran a 4.98 40-yard dash, and he's 315 pounds. Some of the guys that you're hearing Dylan talk about that are in the 300s, like Blake Freeland. This guy's a little bit heavier than Blake Freeland and a bit shorter, but he ran a 4.98 40-yard dash, which was second among all offensive tackles. Um, of course, being 315 pounds is going to be hard to get your body off the ground. So his vertical was only 28 and a half inches. But everything about this guy screams talented tackle. Watching him play is talented. I'm worried about his size a bit. I think that's what's going to ultimately knock him in this year's draft. But I think the combine drills, his physical metrics, I think to me, they were impressive enough to be the 10th best combine performance, in my opinion. Number 9, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee. This guy had 1.50 second 10-yard split flat. All the guys that are undersized, like Tank Dell, all these little guys, Deuce Vaughn, who's a 5'5" running back out of Kansas State. All these guys, their bread and butter is going to be made in these 10-yard splits and their three cone drills, because that's the short area quickness, and this is extremely important for wide receiver. Jalen Hyatt came into this draft. I had some questions about his long speed. He answered them with a 4.4 40-yard dash. He had a 40-inch vertical leap. He had 11-foot 3-inch broad jump, which, if I'm not mistaken, out of my entire top 10 list, that was the highest. He's 6 foot tall. He's got a smaller frame at 176. Hopefully he grows into his man body, but this guy has all the physical tools outside of maybe strength, just because you're young, your body's not fully developed, but everything else is on par for a very, very supremely gifted um, first round wide receiver. I'm not sure if he'll be drafted in the first round, but I definitely think that he will be drafted in the second round if he's not in the first. A very talented wide receiver, and I know he was on Dylan's watch list last week. My number 8, this one excites me. It's Jaw Gibbs. This guy, we knew he was going to be explosive. He was on my list last week. I said, this guy he's going to run a fast time. He's explosive. Everyone talks about him. He's got the weight of Jamal Charles and a very similar height to the LaDainian Tomlinson. LT was about 5'10", Jaws 5'9", but at 199 pounds, he's pretty stout. He had the 5th best 10-yard split out of all the running backs at 1.52 seconds. He ran a 4.36 second 40-yard dash, blazing fast. That was good enough for second among all running backs. And he had a 33.5-inch vertical. This guy can get off the ground. This guy can explode. I think he's going to be a very, very sought-after running back. There's a huge question on if running back should be drafted in the first round. Sometimes, you got to take a flyer on these guys. I think I'm going to talk about one in a little bit, but you can't pass up athleticism at the running back position, especially on cheap rookie deals. If you draft Jaw Gibbs in the first 3 rounds, honestly, if you get him in the third round, it's a steal. But if you can draft him in the first 3 rounds, he's going to give you great, great production given the investment you sent with him. My number 7 is the exact same as Dylan's. It's Blake Freeland. This guy had an incredible combine, in my opinion. At 302 pounds, he also ran a 4.98 second 40-yard dash. He had a 37-inch vertical. That's crazy. That was first among all tackles. He had a 10-inch broad jump that was also first. He's also 6'8". Um, a lot of like I think Andy Heck, he's the offensive line coach for the Chiefs. Andy Reid was an offensive lineman. These guys, they like big offensive linemen who are athletic and have long arms. Blake Freeland is extremely athletic. I do think exactly what Dylan's saying. Because he's only 302 at 6'8". 300 pounds is still a lot, but at offensive tackle, you're going to be dealing with a lot of speed to power rushes, which helps people generate force as they throw their weight into you. So I do think he struggles with that from what I've watched, which is not a lot of film on Blake Freeland. I'll leave it to the BYU fan. That fan used loosely to the guy in Idaho right now, but I do think that that's going to be something that's going to knock his draft stock. Is hey, you're only 302 at 6'8", and we need someone who's beefy and bigger for their body frame. But overall, Blake Freeland killed it. Freeland killed it this combine. I was very impressed by how well he performed. I certainly did not expect it. There, number 6, I have Chase Brown. He's the running back from Illinois. I did not see this coming. He ran a 4.43 second 40-yard dash, which was really, I didn't expect that time. I'm expecting low 4.5s to a high 4.5. Came out here, killed it. He's 209 pounds at 5 foot 9.5 inches tall. So he's a physical specimen. He had a 40-inch vertical leap. He's explosive, 10 foot 7 inch broad jump. Um, I think this guy greatly improved his draft stock and probably put him in the top 10 if he wasn't already for all running backs coming out this year. This brings me to my number 5, who is actually my top running back coming out this year. Physical metrics aside, if you just watch, like if you're a young player today and you're trying to figure out how do I get better at the running back position, what do I need to look like on the field that will actually get people to be like, holy crap, this guy's good. And that's just turn on the combine, watch Bijan Robinson do the drills. He doesn't lose speed in any of his motion. He's fluid and smooth. His hips are aligned whenever he's making cuts. He keeps them lateral. This guy's got tree trunk legs. Um, just I talk about Lamar Jackson being a gorgeous player to watch. It's just beautiful to watch him play. I'm getting the same vibe from Bijan Robinson. Just watching him play, just watching him do drills, practice even. He looks incredible. And we all knew he was going to be explosive. He's 197 pounds at 6'1" tall, and he ran a 4.46 40-yard dash and a 37-inch vertical, which was sixth best amongst running backs. This guy's got all the physical tools to be a force of nature in the NFL for the next 7, 8, 9 years, really. I think any team, he's definitely a first-round talent, and I think any team looking for a solid running back should definitely invest in this man because I think he's going to be very good for a very long time. Number 4, I have Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback out of Oregon. His film is really good. He likes to take chances, but he also likes to see what the wide receivers are going to do at him earlier in the game. So he'll put himself in position to kind of see their game plan, and then he adjusts accordingly. And I've seen him lock down some really great players. He's got all the physical tools. He's 6'1" tall. He's 197. His 10-yard split was 1.52 seconds, which was third amongst cornerbacks. He had a 41.5-inch vertical leap. He had an 11-foot, 1-inch broad jump. He had a 4.38 second 40-yard dash. All the physical tools are there. Honestly, the production's there, in my opinion. You don't have to get 8,000 interceptions for you to be a productive corner. Honestly, if you show up and your receivers don't produce, you're a productive corner, even though the stats say otherwise. And I think Christian Gonzalez is one of those corners who's got all the physical traits, but his career in college flew under the radar. I don't think it will anymore. I think he showed you that he is easily a top 5 corner coming into this year's draft. And I think that he rose his stock significantly given his physical skill set. Number 3, I have Nolan Smith. If there is any question about how good I don't know what Georgia has put in the water on campus, but they keep churning out absolute studs uh, on the defensive end. These guys, they're filled with defensive players that are all NFL caliber players. Nolan Smith, definitely one of them. He's a defensive lineman for Georgia. He ran a 4.39-second 40-yard dash, which was tops. He had a 41.5-inch vertical as well. Let's just think about this. Nolan Smith is 238 pounds, 6'2", and he had the exact same vertical leap as Christian Gonzalez, someone who's 197 pounds. He's an insane athlete. He had a 10-foot 8-inch broad jump, which was third among defensive linemen. He was first in 10-yard split. He almost led almost every category for defensive linemen, and his athleticism just, man, it just jumps off the page at you. It's awesome. He's going to be a scary guy. He reminds me like how well he did at this combine, and like thinking about him on an NFL defense, it reminds me about how terrified I was last year of Jordan Davis going to the Chargers. I literally had a nightmare about that, and I was scared. Nolan Smith has that same air about him. I'm like, holy crap, this guy's a defensive lineman. He ran a 4.39. That's insane at 238 pounds. I'm impressed with the guy. Definitely showed out this past weekend, and I am anxious to see which team is going to draft him. My number 2 is Anthony Richardson. I think all the accolades that Dylan listed, um, all the production that Dylan talked about, definitely true. This guy is he liked to be called Cam Jackson when he was younger because he was got the size of Cam Newton almost, but he's you know got good great long end speed, which is very Lamar Jackson esque. He's not as fast as Jackson, but he's much bigger, and he's not as big as Cam Newton, but he's much faster. So it's like you're getting a physical freak at the quarterback position. He's big. He's 6'4", 244 pounds. There's not much more you can ask from a quarterback as far as physical talent from this guy. But I do think the knock on Anthony Richardson has always been his accuracy. Just like Dylan said, I've seen this guy make stupid throws. I mean, these throws are crazy. You're like, that's football genius right there. And then other times you're like, how did you miss that? How did you miss that? Like the issues with Carson Wentz, like 5-yard outs, these guys are open. You have to make those throws in the NFL. One of the things that helped Patrick Mahomes morph in to possibly the greatest season he's had in his young career was taking what the defense gave him, taking the short throws. But he could always hit them, and he could hit them consistently. And so you're seeing how his offense had to be changed and morph over time, and use that skill set a lot more. If you can't do that in the NFL, your team is going to lose. You're not going to be successful. So you need to be accurate with almost every pass you throw, especially if you're working with lesser receivers. I don't think Anthony Richardson can do that. It would shock me if he went number 1 overall, even given his physical traits that he put on display this past weekend. But he's definitely got the talent there. He's definitely a quarterback I would want to sit for 2 years, maybe 3, Aaron Rodgers esque. It might have to be Aaron Rodgers esque, where we have to completely redevelop his entire throwing motion. We've got to figure out how to make it more accurate. But as far as physical gifts, this guy, I mean, it's going to be very tempting to play him because he's just extremely physically talented. And I think he had a phenomenal combine. If there's any questions about all the Twitter conversation around Anthony Richardson, if there are any questions about that just being a weird fad by fanatical people, that was answered this past weekend. It's a legit phenomenon. Which brings me to my number 1 performer this past weekend. It's Bryce Ford Wheaton. I texted Dylan, and I was sitting, I was getting ready to take a shower. I texted Dylan real quick. I was like, this guy, Bryce Ford Wheaton, is absolutely killing it. I was like, we haven't seen this level of athletic prowess from a guy that big and long since Calvin Johnson. He was scoring almost identical measurements to Calvin Johnson. He had a 4.38-second 40-yard dash. He had a 41-inch vertical leap. He had a 10-foot 9-inch broad jump, and he's doing this at 6'4", 221 pounds. By the way, he had a 1.54 10-yard split. That's really good numbers. He had a 6.97 second three cone drill. This one's important to me because this is short area quickness for someone who's really tall. It's going to be hard to be quick in short, small areas. And he was seventh among all wide receivers that participated in the three cone drill. Um, just just as Dylan was talking about on his list, Bryce was fifth, but you could tell by the raw athletic score, this guy is extremely physically gifted. Um, the tape does show route running is not his best attribute, but I do think that's coachable. I've seen it be coachable, and I think he's got all the physical traits as long as he works hard and puts his head down to eventually become a starting caliber wide receiver. It's going to be hard to keep him off the field with that kind of speed and size and catch radius. So this is my top 10. Dylan, what do you think?
So I loved your list. I think it's a phenomenal list. And a big reason why is you got like four guys that were very close to being on my list and not making the list. My favorite player from the combine was Bijan Robinson. I'm so glad that you mentioned him because it killed. I was like trying to find a way to put him on the list, but I didn't want to be biased. But I loved what I saw from him. He silenced everybody. Any questions about his speed? Because there was a lot of people. He reminds me of kind of like Jonathan Taylor. He's that kind of like he's an amazing runner. He's amazing vision. He has all the physical abilities. I think this guy comes in. He's a top 10 runner. There's a lot of hype. Now, I was thinking at one point maybe the Eagles could get him with their later in the first round, but now everyone's like, if you want him, you're gonna have to get him in the top 10 because that's how well he performed. And he's a running back. Running backs don't go top 10 anymore. You also mentioned Jalen Hyatt, which was one of my favorite players to watch in college football last year, and he's a player I'm really excited about watching in the National Football League. The dude is an athletic freak. His ability to go deep is unbelievable. He's one of the best deep ball catchers. Probably the no, not probably is the best deep ball catcher in college football, and I think he's going to make an immediate impact in that area in the NFL as well. Chase Brown was my number one running back listed for best combine performance. You got him, and you got Christian Gonzalez. I like all four of those picks. And then obviously we had some of them the same. And I can't blame you for putting Ford Wheaton number one because he did have an amazing combine as well. Yeah, I like it seems like every year over time, like these guys just keep getting more athletic. And I agree with what you say. I actually think Anthony Richardson might be the most athletic quarterback in NFL history.
Could very well
The
be.
guy, like usually, there's only one guy that I can think of. I don't remember if he had a perfect score or not, but Joe Webb. I don't even know if you remember who that is,
Did he play
but
for the Steelers? Did he have a short stint with the
I
Steelers?
think he may have had a short stint with the Steelers. He gained notoriety playing for the Minnesota Vikings. He was a quarterback who got moved to wide receiver multiple times. But he was a pretty decent quarterback and not a great wide receiver, but he was capable of being on an NFL roster at both positions. That's how good he was. I'm pretty sure he had a perfect raw athletic score as well at quarterback. But he's one of those guys. He wasn't very big. He wasn't necessarily small. He's like 6'2", but he was lightning fast. But never that I can think of have I ever seen a guy with that much size, that much strength, also running 4.44 speed. That's absurd. I think he literally might be the biggest uh, athletic freak we've ever seen come in and play. You have the Greek freak, and now you have the Florida freak as well because this guy's insane.
He's the Florida
There's
man.
no, oh yeah, you talked about sitting him for 3 years. There's no way in heck this guy's getting on the field. I guarantee you in packages to begin, it's going to be kind of like what they did with Lamar Jackson, which I hate doing when they do that kind of stuff. But this guy's going to be a starting NFL quarterback. I guarantee you in year two, if not year one, even though he's a project, but because of his arm strength and his athletic ability, which is second. Like he may come into the league. He's in the running for strongest arm in the league, and he's not even in it yet. Obviously, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes keep arguing about which one of them are the strongest arm. But this guy is going to come in and immediately he's on their level when it comes to throwing power. Obviously, like I was talking about, he has some work. Um, but yeah, I after watching that, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think he's quite as accurate as Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz's thing was like he had great touch on the ball early in his career. If this guy improves his throwing ability, look out because this could be a future MVP player that we're seeing right now. And I think whoever picks number one, because I don't think it's going to be the Bears, I think they're going to trade that pick, which would probably be smart because I think it's going to go. I think you may see 2 or 3 quarterbacks go in the first 5 picks, and I guarantee you that he's one of them. So
I
I think you had a
saw.
phenomenal.
Go ahead.
I think you had a phenomenal list, every bit as good of mine. I might even like yours better because you added some of my favorite players.
I appreciate that. I did see something on Twitter that said that essentially um, Anthony Richardson actually performed better in the interviews than all the other cornerbacks or quarterbacks. So teams loved him the most, which to some people is shocking. But I I wholeheartedly agree with almost everything you said about Anthony Richardson. Actually, everything you said. It's going to be really hard to not play him. He's got all future MVP potential. He's going to walk into the league with one of the strongest arms. Yeah, I just everything, all the accolades, all the praise you can heap on Anthony Richardson, you can because he proved it this past week and how incredibly gifted he is athletically.
Yeah, and I think another thing, I think you said Bijan Robinson weighed in like 197 or something like that. He actually, I have him listed as weighing in at 215.
No,
Uh,
Christian Gonzalez is
oh,
197.
okay. But Bijan Robinson at 215 running that fast and like, yeah, he and Anthony Richardson are probably my 2 favorite players to watch at the combine. But yeah, I cannot like. I always say my oldest brother once said, "Merry Draftmas" to me, and now I say it every single year because I love it. Because the draft literally is Christmas for football fans. It kills me because like I feel like the combine is just like one of the biggest teases ever. It's like it's like you're going to Santa's toy shop and he's showing you all the amazing things he has, and you're like, I can't have them all, but I want them all. And this year's draft, oh my gosh, dude, I can't even. The only thing that bothers me is I don't think there's a lot of really great offensive linemen. I said that last show, and I still think that. There are a few decent ones, but like to me, compared to years past, where there's usually like 1 or 2 guys who really stand out, I didn't see that from anybody. There's not one guy that I left just stuck in my mind. John Gaines, athletically, yes, stuck out in my mind. But like when you talk about like their ability to make an impact immediately, I just didn't see that. But if you look at quarterback, running back, they're two of the better classes in a while. You have a pretty good wide receiver class. You have another remarkable corner class. You had obviously one of the better ones I've seen ever last year, but I think you see that again this year. Great safeties, edge rushers seem like they're. I don't know where this is coming from, but they seem to just be growing on trees around the United States. So cannot wait for the draft next month. But that's all we have for today's episode of Dueker Sports. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be back later this week, but this will be the last week for a little while that we do 2 episodes. We're actually going to start doing 1 episode a week, probably up until the week of the draft. It depends. Free agency gets a little wild, so we may the first week of free agency do 2 episodes. But let us know what you guys think in the comments. Let us know who some of your top performers were. Let us know where you hope some of these guys go. If you watched the combine and you thought, I want that guy on my team, let us know who it was in the comments below. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you later this week.